Okay, why did I start learning Finnish language? Well, the very first reason why I even started looking for information about that language is probably pretty obvious. So yeah, there's this one Finnish artist, Käärijä, who represented Finland at Eurovision 2023, and he won everybody's heart. So yeah, I just remember watching interviews with him in English, and he didn't know English that well back then, and he was still so charming. So I just felt like I was missing out on something because I couldn't watch interviews with him speaking Finnish because I would not understand anything. It's raining so hard right now. And then his song Cha Cha Cha, the absolute banger, the anthem of life, it was also in Finnish. So I just remember watching the lyrics video for that song, and I remember thinking, wow, all of these words with so many double vowels and double consonants, I wonder how does that work? And basically after that I just went and started doing my research on Finnish language to learn more about it, to understand what that is. And basically what I found absolutely blew my mind, because I remember finding that article or just a picture of the whole language tree of all the languages. And it was like this huge tree with all of the language families of most languages that exist. And then there's this little bush with Uralic group of languages, which are Finnish language, Estonian language, Hungarian, and some other languages. And I just remember thinking, how is that even possible that throughout the whole history, all of the languages were so intertwined. They had the same roots, they had the same sort of development over the years. And then there's Finnish, Estonian, Hungarian, and another bunch of languages that literally were able to preserve their core features, their structure, their vocabulary, everything. How is that even possible? So that was probably the first thing that absolutely blew my mind. That Finnish language is just so unique and so different from pretty much all of the languages in the world. And when I already started kind of learning it, I actually felt that. If you have learned different languages, you can probably see sometimes some similarities between them, like German and English, for example. They have plenty of similarities. Most of the Scandinavian languages, they are also quite similar. And then there is literally the Finnish language, where almost every word is just so different from anything I have ever imagined, I have ever heard of. So yeah, that was pretty crazy to learn. And the second thing that absolutely blew my mind was the concept of vowel harmony in Finnish language, which is this thing where the hard vowels like a, o, u are in one category, and the soft vowel, I don't actually know what they're called, but whatever. And the soft vowels like a, u, they're in this other category, and there's this in between e and e, which are also I think they're also pronounced quite differently depending on which category the word is in. So it's e, and e, kinda, I guess. So in that sense, this very simple, but at the same time, in my mind, such beautiful rule that in one word you can only have vowels from one category. And it's just so fascinating in my mind that this rule applies to the whole language, basically. And also, if you're learning the language, I feel like it can very much help you understand, because, well, in compound words where, a word is made out of shorter and simpler words, there can be this mixture of these categories. But if you're learning the language, then it can also just help you understand where one smaller word ends and where another one starts. So it's just so beautiful. I don't know. And The third reason why I like Finnish language is because you write as you speak and you speak as you write. So if you have double consonants or double vowels in the written word, you pronounce all of these double consonants and double vowels. In my mind, it's just so incredible. Like, you don't have any words where you have to just, learn how this particular word is pronounced, how this particular letter combination is pronounced. You can just pronounce words just like that, basically just understanding which letter is pronounced which way, and then you can just sort of compile the whole word from the letters, and it's that simple, literally. And I think once again, it's just really, really beautiful. The other reason why I love this language is the sound of it. I remember at the very beginning when I first heard Finnish speech, at first I thought that it resembles Japanese in some way, and now I kind of understand why, because it's just as rhythmical. And I guess it is rhythmical because of the double consonants, and yet it's very melodic as well because of the double vowels. So when you hear Finnish speech, it has all of these sort of like bumps when you kind of hold your consonant because it's a double one. And then also sometimes it does sound kind of almost like a song, I don't know, like very melodic as well because of the double vowels, because you sometimes have to pronounce the vowel longer if there's a double one. That's also just so cool in my mind. Another thing that I found out when I started learning the language was that it has a very strict logic and structure in the sense of all of the conjugations, all of the declinations. They are very much determined by certain rules, and there are almost no exceptions from these rules, which I find really cool as well if you're learning the language. It's just really cool to sort of understand how it works and, not memorizing hundreds and hundreds of words that are just exceptions that you just, that you should just know, basically. But at the same time, it has this sort of flexibility, I guess, because there's none rules like, certain words should be at a certain position in the sentence. So I feel most of the rules like that, they're mostly about compiling the word using some certain endings, suffixes, and stuff like that, basically. And one of the concepts that was also quite interesting to me is that Finnish language doesn't have any prepositions. So all of the prepositions are being replaced with adding endings to nouns, adjectives, or using certain words kind of after these words, which I guess kind of also serve as prepositions, but you can't call them that because they're not prepositions, they're not before the word. So yeah, another thing that was also quite interesting to me was that, Finnish language does not have future tense, which is just kind of interesting, I guess. You just sort of use present tense and you kind of understand that the whole thing is about the future from the context or from certain words that indicate that it's about the future. So yeah, that's just kind of interesting. And also because Finnish language doesn't have prepositions and it's using all of the endings and stuff, that basically means that it has a lot of cases, 15 cases, and most of them are locative cases. So, you just sort of change the form of the word to make it mean like to go out of the house, from the house. You use a locative case for that. So in that sense, for the language learner, it might be kind of pain in the ass, I guess, but at the same time, not really, because like the fact that there are 15 of them, sure, but you don't have prepositions, you don't have to memorize all of these things, and you just have to understand how the cases work, and you just have to, learn certain words that are kind of used instead of prepositions as well. But I don't know, for me this whole thing just seems very fascinating, and yeah, I just feel like that is really interesting to learn all of these things. And yeah, I think you just got to understand how these rules work, and then you can build words and sentences, and yeah. Anyways, another thing that's also really cool, in my opinion, is that Finnish language does not have any concept of, feminine, masculine, neutral nouns, and even the personal pronoun. There's no he and she, there's just one pronoun, hen. And it's just really cool. You don't have to learn all of these things about each and every noun in the language, and you can just use words basically without all of these things. I think that's really cool. I forgot to mention two things. First of all, stress in Finnish language always falls on the first syllable, which I find really simple and beautiful as well. Second of all, when I was searching information about Finnish language, I found out that there's these things called puhekieli and kirjakieli, which mean spoken language and written language, and it's basically not like slang or official words. So basically, spoken Finnish just uses constructions that have been shortened, like all of the verbs change, some of the word forms change just to become a little bit shorter. I mean, it is kind of like you have to learn the written Finnish first and then learn the spoken Finnish as well. It's like you're learning two languages, but not really, because it does kind of make sense how puhekieli is formed. You just sort of take the word from the written form and then you just shorten it and you speak it. So basically it does kind of make sense, but when I first learned about that concept, it did feel like something new and something that I have never really heard of before. So that was also kind of interesting to find out. Yeah, I think that was kind of it for me when I was just taking my first steps at trying to understand what Finnish language is. And all of these things were actually enough for me to want to learn that language. Well, obviously with, wanting to understand the songs, the lyrics to the songs of my favorite artist, but I think I wouldn't start learning a language just kind of to understand the lyrics if I didn't actually really like the language. So yeah, and I guess the conclusion is that I just like how pretty much everything in Finnish language makes sense, and I just love it. In that sense, I just remember how it's cool. I kind of didn't like history, social sciences, all of these subjects where you had to memorize huge paragraphs or whatever, like huge amounts of text. I loved maths, physics, IT so much more because in these subjects you can just sort of learn the basic rules, the basic laws, and then just apply these laws to everything else, to solve problems, to, construct your own solutions to the problems. And in that sense, I feel like Finnish language very much resembles these subjects for me, and that's also why I really like it. And I have been learning it for quite some time now, but I have only recently started learning it through the course book so that I actually learn all of these rules. And so far it's been so interesting for me. I just love Finnish language. I feel like it's one of the most beautiful languages ever, and I really hope that I will be able to learn it to a really good level because I would love to speak it. Yeah. Also, I feel like all of the words, whenever I'm trying to pronounce Finnish, all of the words just sort of feel really nice in my mouth. It's just such a pleasure to pronounce Finnish words. That's also one of the points, and yeah, I hope I will be able to learn it to a really good level, and that's kind of my goal. We'll see how it goes, but these were the reasons that made me fall in love with that language 2.5 years ago, and the interest, the love has not disappeared ever since. So yeah, here's to many more years with that language, I guess.